Sarah Matthews clutched the steering wheel of her BMW sedan as smoke billowed from under the hood. The car had lurched violently before coming to a complete stop on the shoulder of Interstate 95. She glanced at her watch. 8:32 in the morning. Her presentation to the board was scheduled for 9. This meeting would determine whether her proposed talent acquisition strategy would receive the funding she'd spent months lobbying for. She reached for her phone with trembling hands and dialed roadside assistance. At least an hour, the dispatcher informed her apologetically. Sarah closed her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. The polished, collected image she had carefully cultivated over 5 years at Meridian Motors was about to crumble because of a mechanical failure. She loosened her carefully, knotted silk scarf, feeling beads of sweat forming despite the cool autumn morning. The notification for her calendar reminder pinged mockingly on her phone screen. The sound of tires on gravel made Sarah look up. An old Ford pickup truck, its blue paint faded by years of sun exposure, pulled up behind her BMW. A tall man in worn jeans and a gray t-shirt stepped out, approaching her window with an unhurried gait. Sarah hesitated before lowering her window halfway. Living in the city had taught her caution, especially as a woman alone on a highway. Having some trouble? The man asked, his voice carrying a slight southern drawl. His face was weathered, with laugh lines around kind eyes that somehow put Sarah at ease. "My car just died," she explained. "I've called for assistance, but they won't be here for at least an hour." The man nodded, glancing at the smoke still escaping from under the hood. "Mind if I take a look? I'm pretty good with engines." "Name's Mike. By the way, Mike Reynolds." Something in his demeanor, the confident way he assessed the vehicle, perhaps, made Sarah trust him. "I'm Sarah," she replied, stepping out of her car. "I'd appreciate any help. I'm already late for an important meeting." Mike nodded without asking further questions and gestured toward the hood. "Let's see what we've got here." Sarah pressed the hood release and watched as Mike propped it open, immediately stepping back from the cloud of steam that escaped. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with old scars and calluses, the hands of someone who had spent years working with machinery. Mike leaned over the engine, his movements deliberate and practiced. Sarah couldn't help but notice how different he looked from the mechanics at her dealership with their pristine uniforms and computerized diagnostic tools. "Looks like you've got issues with your cooling system and possibly your fuel pump," Mike said after several minutes of examination. "I can fix it, but it'll take some time." Sarah checked her watch again and sighed. "How long?" Mike wiped his hands on a rag he pulled from his back pocket. "About 2? Maybe 2.5 hours if I've got the right parts in my truck. I carry basics for emergencies." He hesitated, studying her anxious expression. "Listen, I understand if you'd rather wait for the professionals. No offense taken." Sarah weighed her options quickly. The roadside assistance would take at least an hour to arrive, and then they'd likely just tow her car to a garage where it might sit for days. "No, please," she said. "If you can fix it, I'd be incredibly grateful." Mike nodded once and returned to his truck, coming back with a weathered toolbox and various parts. Sarah made a quick call to her assistant, instructing him to stall the board meeting if possible, or at least to distribute her presentation materials. She watched Mike work, impressed by his methodical approach. His hands moved with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the inner workings of complex machinery. "You seem to know exactly what you're doing," she observed after a while. Mike glanced up briefly, a small smile crossing his face. "Should hope so. Been working on engines since I was 14. He didn't elaborate further, focusing instead on carefully removing a damaged component. Sarah leaned against her car, resignation settling in. Her phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, but she found herself more interested in watching this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere to help her. The morning sun climbed higher as Mike worked diligently, occasionally asking Sarah to try starting the engine or retrieving specific tools from his truck. Nearly 2 hours later, he straightened up, wiping sweat from his brow. That should do it, he announced, closing the hood with a satisfying thunk. Try starting her up now. Sarah slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine purred to life immediately, running smoother than it had in weeks. Relief washed over her, followed quickly by gratitude. She stepped out of the car, reaching for her purse. I can't thank you enough, she said earnestly. Please, let me pay you for your time and the parts. To her surprise, Mike shook his head, his hands raised in polite refusal. No need for that, ma'am. Just glad I could help. Sarah insisted, holding out several $100 bills. Please. You've saved me hours of hassle and possibly my presentation. This is the least I can do. Mike's expression changed subtly, a flash of pride crossing his features. I appreciate the offer. Really? But I don't need payment. He glanced at his watch, an old timepiece that looked out of place on his work-roughened wrist. Though I will admit I'm pretty hungry. Haven't had a chance for breakfast this morning. Got to pick up my daughter from her friend's house soon. Sarah suddenly remembered the sandwich she had packed for lunch. Turkey and avocado on artisanal bread from the deli near her apartment. Would you accept a sandwich? She asked, retrieving the neatly wrapped package from her bag. It's not much, but it's fresh. The way Mike looked at the offered sandwich made Sarah wonder when he had last eaten a proper meal. That's mighty kind of you, he said, accepting the package with careful hands. More than fair, there was something in his dignified acceptance that touched Sarah deeply. This man had spent hours helping a stranger, asking nothing in return, and seemed genuinely grateful for a simple sandwich. On impulse, she reached into her purse and handed him her business card. If you ever need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call me. I'm the HR director at Meridian Motors. Mike tucked the card into his shirt pocket with a nod of acknowledgement. You'd better get to your meeting, he said kindly. Drive safe now. Sarah thanked him once more before getting into her car, watching in the rearview mirror as Mike returned to his truck, the sandwich held carefully in his hand. She arrived at Meridian's gleaming headquarters 45 minutes late, but managed to convince the board to reschedule her presentation for the afternoon. As she hurried through her day, attending meetings and answering emails, Sarah found her thoughts repeatedly returning to the kind stranger with the gentle eyes and capable hands who had refused payment for his labor. Something about the encounter had affected her deeply, leaving her with questions she couldn't quite articulate. That evening, as she sat in her modern apartment overlooking the city skyline, Sarah found herself searching social media for Mike Reynolds. But the common name yielded thousands of results. She recalled the license plate on his truck and, using connections in the DMV that she had cultivated during a hiring initiative, managed to obtain his full name and address. Mike Reynolds lived in a modest apartment complex in the outskirts of the city, far from Sarah's upscale neighborhood. Further research revealed something surprising. Michael James Reynolds had previously been a senior mechanical engineer at Continental Automotive, one of Meridian's competitors. He had an impressive resume, with patents to his name and glowing recommendations. Yet he had abruptly left the company 3 years ago, and his employment history since then was spotty at best. Sarah's professional curiosity was piqued. What would cause someone with such credentials to abandon a promising career? The answer came in the form of a local newspaper article about a charity fundraiser. Local engineer loses wife to cancer, raises daughter alone. The photograph showed a slightly younger Mike with his arm around a small girl with his same kind eyes. The article mentioned how he had left his demanding job to care for his daughter after his wife's passing. The revelation hit Sarah harder than she expected. The man who had fixed her car wasn't just a good Samaritan with mechanical skills. He was a highly qualified engineer who had sacrificed his career for his child. As Meridian's HR director, Sarah immediately recognized the talent that had slipped through the corporate world's fingers. More than that, as someone who had dedicated her career to finding the right opportunities for people, she felt a professional obligation to intervene. Meridian was currently expanding their engineering department and struggling to find experienced staff. Their new flexible work initiative, one that Sarah herself had championed, could be perfect for someone in Mike's situation. Before she could second-guess herself, Sarah made a decision. She would visit Mike Reynolds the next day with a proposition that might change both their lives. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of apartment 312 at Oakwood Gardens. Mike sat at the small kitchen table, helping his 8-year-old daughter Emma with her math homework before school. Their morning routine was well established. Wake at 6. Breakfast by 6:30. Homework review until 7:15. Then the walk to Emma's elementary school, 3 blocks away. The apartment was small but meticulously organized, with bookshelves filled with engineering textbooks. Alongside children's stories, on the wall hung a framed photograph of a woman with Emma's smile and warm eyes, Rebecca Reynolds, whose absence was still a tangible presence in their lives. "Daddy, can we have pancakes tomorrow?" Emma asked, carefully writing the answer to a multiplication problem. "It's Friday tomorrow, and Mrs. Lopez says Friday is a day for celebrations." Mike smiled, the expression transforming his tired face. "I think we can manage that." Sunshine. He checked his watch, the same one Rebecca had given him on their 5th anniversary. "Time to pack up. Don't want to be late." Emma carefully placed her homework in her backpack. A second-hand item Mike had meticulously repaired when the zipper broke. As they were about to leave, a knock on the door surprised them both. Visitors were rare at the Reynolds household, especially at 7 in the morning. Mike opened the door to find a familiar face framed by professionally styled hair, wearing a tailored blazer that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Miss Matthews," he said, unable to mask his surprise. "Sarah, please," she corrected with a warm smile. Her eyes moved past him to where Emma stood curiously. "And who might this be?" Emma stepped forward with the confidence of a child who had grown up too quickly. "I'm Emma Reynolds. Are you Daddy's friend?" Sarah knelt to Emma's level, a gesture that immediately earned her points in Mike's book. "I'm Sarah. Your dad helped me yesterday when my car broke down. He fixed it when nobody else would stop." Emma beamed with pride. "Daddy can fix anything. He used to build whole cars before Mommy went to heaven." An awkward silence followed as Mike cleared his throat. "Emma, grab your lunch from the fridge. Okay? We need to head out soon." He turned to Sarah. "Not that it isn't nice to see you, but how did you find my address?" Sarah had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Professional hazard. I'm in HR. Finding people is part of my job. I hope you don't mind. I actually came here with a purpose." Mike raised an eyebrow, suddenly conscious of his modest apartment and the worn t-shirt he was wearing. "Emma needs to get to school, but you're welcome to walk with us if you'd like to talk." Sarah nodded, falling into step beside them as they left the apartment. Emma skipped ahead, occasionally turning to study Sarah with unabashed curiosity. "I did some research," Sarah began once Emma was out of earshot. "You were a senior engineer at Continental. You have patents. You were on track to become a department head." Mike's expression tightened. "That was another lifetime ago," Sarah persisted gently. "Meridian Motors is looking for a lead engineer for our new electric vehicle division. After seeing your work yesterday, I'm convinced you'd be perfect for the role." Mike laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Miss Matthews, Sarah, I appreciate the thought, but I left that world for a reason." They stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Emma waved at them from the school gates just down the block. "My wife died 3 years ago," Mike said quietly. "Pancreatic cancer. It was quick and brutal. Emma was 5. She needed me more than Continental did." Sarah nodded, understanding dawning. "The hours were impossible," Mike continued. "The travel? The pressure. I couldn't be the father Emma needed and the engineer they wanted. So I chose my daughter." The light changed, and they crossed. "What if you didn't have to choose?" Sarah asked. "Meridian has implemented a flexible work program. You could work partially from home, Set your own hours within reason. Emma would always come first. Mike stopped walking, studying Sarah's face for signs of insincerity but finding none. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Because I recognize talent when I see it. Because our company needs someone with your skills. And because yesterday you spent 2 hours helping a stranger and asked for nothing in return. They had reached the school gates where Emma waited. Daddy, are you coming to the class party next week? Miss, Sarah can come too, she called. Mike smiled at his daughter. We'll talk about it tonight. Sunshine. Have a good day at school. After Emma disappeared into the building, Mike turned back to Sarah. I can't make any promises, but I'd be willing to hear more about the position. Sarah's smile was brilliant. That's all I'm asking. How about a proper interview tomorrow at 10? I'll text you the details. As she walked away, Mike found himself watching her go, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The Meridian Motors headquarters loomed before Mike the next morning. Its glass and steel facade, reflecting the autumn sunlight. He adjusted his tie, borrowed from a neighbor, and took a deep breath. Emma had been ecstatic at the possibility of her father returning to building cars. As she put it, you always look happiest when you talk about engines, Daddy, she had said with the simple wisdom of children. Now, as he passed through the security gates, Mike felt a confusing mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. The corporate world had once been his natural habitat, but 3 years of odd jobs and financial struggle had left him feeling like an imposter in his one good suit. Sarah met him in the lobby. Professional, but with a warmth that eased some of his tension. Ready? She asked, leading him toward the elevators. The team is excited to meet you. The interview panel consisted of the engineering director, the chief technology officer, and 2 project managers. Sarah introduced Mike, and then took a seat at the side of the room, becoming an observer. The questions began technically straightforward, assessments of his knowledge base and experience. Mike found himself relaxing as he discussed engine efficiency models and materials, science, subjects in which he had once excelled. What innovations do you see as critical for the next generation of electric vehicles? The CTO asked. Without thinking, Mike reached for a marker and approached the whiteboard. If I may? He asked, and upon receiving a nod, began sketching a redesigned battery configuration. The room grew quiet as he explained his concept. One he had developed during late nights after Emma was asleep, with no expectation of ever implementing it. When he finished, the engineering director leaned forward. That's remarkably similar to a problem we've been trying to solve for months. You developed this while working independently? Mike nodded. Suddenly self-conscious. It was more of a thought experiment. I still keep up with industry journals. The panel exchanged glances, and Sarah couldn't hide her smile. The questions continued, but the tone had shifted from evaluation to collaboration. By the end of the 2-hour interview, Mike was engaged in an animated discussion about production timelines with people who spoke his professional language. When the panel finally concluded, the CTO shook his hand firmly. We have a few more candidates to interview. Mr. Reynolds, but we'll be in touch very soon. Sarah escorted Mike back to the lobby, her excitement barely contained. That went even better than I expected, she said. I've never seen Martin get up from his chair during an interview, let alone start taking notes. Mike felt lightheaded with possibility. I should thank you, he said as they reached the entrance. Regardless of what happens, it felt good to be back in that world, even just for a morning. Sarah smiled. Save your thanks. This was entirely selfish on my part. Meridian needs someone exactly like you. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it quickly. Actually, would you mind waiting here for just a moment? Before Mike could respond, she hurried back toward the elevators. Left alone in the vast lobby, Mike watched the corporate employees streaming past in their tailored suits and polished shoes. 3 years ago, he had been one of them, secure, ambitious, certain of his trajectory. Now he stood as an outsider, A single father whose priorities had fundamentally shifted. Could he truly bridge these worlds? Would Emma suffer if he tried? Sarah returned 15 minutes later. Her expression carefully composed, but her eyes sparkling. The panel has made a decision, she said without preamble. They want to offer you the position immediately. Senior engineer, electric vehicle division. The salary is 20% above industry standard. With healthcare benefits that would begin immediately. Mike stared at her, speechless. Sarah continued, her words measured as if she feared he might bolt. The position includes our flexible work arrangement, 3 days in the office, 2 days remote. Core hours would be 9 to 3, allowing you to handle school drop-off and pick-up. Emergency time off for childcare would never be questioned. She paused, watching his face. It's not charity, Mike. It's recognition of exceptional talent that our industry can't afford to lose. The figures she quoted as his potential salary made Mike's head swim. It was more than triple what he currently cobbled together from repair jobs and weekend shifts at the local hardware store. It would mean a better school for Emma. A college fund. Maybe even a house someday instead of their cramped apartment. I don't know what to say, he managed finally. Sarah smiled. Say yes, or at least say you'll think about it. The formal offer will be emailed to you today. Mike nodded slowly. I'll need to talk to Emma. This would change things for both of us. Understanding softened Sarah's professional demeanor. Of course. Family comes first. That's precisely the philosophy behind our flexible work initiative. As Mike left the building, his mind raced with possibilities he hadn't dared consider since Rebecca's diagnosis 3 years earlier. Emma's reaction was immediate and unequivocal. You have to take it. Daddy, she exclaimed when Mike explained the offer that evening. You'll get to build cars again, and we can get a bigger apartment where I can have my own room with purple walls. Mike laughed. Surprised by her enthusiasm, it would mean some changes. Sunshine. I'd be working more than I do now. There might be days when Mrs. Garcia next door would need to watch you after school. Emma's expression grew serious. So like her mother's that it made Mike's heart ache. But you'd be happier, right? You always look sad when you come home from fixing people's sinks and stuff. Out of the mouths of babes? Mike thought. He hadn't realized his dissatisfaction was so visible to his daughter. And, Emma added with the practical logic of children, we could buy the good cereal instead of the store brand. That night, after Emma was asleep, Mike sat at their small kitchen table and drafted an acceptance email. His finger hovered over the send button for several long moments before he finally pressed it. Within minutes, his phone rang, Sarah's name appearing on the screen. I just saw your acceptance come through, she said when he answered. I'm thrilled, Mike. Truly. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its professional polish. Would you and Emma like to celebrate? Maybe ice cream this weekend? My treat? Of course. The invitation surprised Mike. That's very kind of you, but unnecessary. You've already done more than enough. Sarah's laugh was warm through the phone. Consider it purely selfish. I get a hiring bonus for exceptional talent acquisition. The lightness in her tone made Mike smile. In that case, I wouldn't want to deny you your bonus. Saturday afternoon works for us. The following Monday, Mike entered Meridian Motors as an employee for the first time. He was assigned a spacious office with a view of the development track where prototype vehicles were tested. His new colleagues welcomed him with curiosity and respect, particularly after the CTO personally introduced him as the mind behind our next-generation battery configuration. The adjustment wasn't without challenges. Corporate politics had not changed in his absence, and the learning curve for Meridian's proprietary systems was steep, but for the first time in years, Mike felt intellectually engaged, his mind racing with ideas and solutions that had lain dormant while he focused on survival. Each evening when he picked up Emma from the after-school program, she would ask eagerly about what cars he had worked on that day. Her pride in her father's new position evident in the way she introduced him to her teachers as, my dad. the car engineer. Sarah checked in on Mike's progress regularly, first weekly and then daily, as they began collaborating on a diversity hiring initiative for the engineering department. Their professional relationship gradually developed alongside a growing friendship. Mike found in Sarah someone who shared his drive and analytical mind, while Sarah discovered in Mike a perspective that had been missing from her corporate worldview, that of a single parent navigating the delicate balance between professional ambition and family responsibilities. You've transformed our flexible work program from a recruiting tool to an actual philosophy, she told him one afternoon as they reviewed applicant profiles. Having you advocate for these policies from within engineering gives them legitimacy they never had before. 3 months after joining Meridian, Mike received his first quarterly bonus, a sum that allowed him to move Emma to a better apartment in a neighborhood with an excellent public school. Sarah helped them celebrate the move with a housewarming dinner. She insisted on cooking herself, revealing surprising culinary skills for someone who had previously claimed to survive primarily on takeout and protein bars. As Emma showed Sarah her new purple-walled bedroom, Mike found himself watching them together, a complicated emotion rising in his chest. His daughter had been without a maternal figure since Rebecca's death, and seeing her blossom under Sarah's attentive interest stirred both gratitude and a wistful sadness. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Sarah and Mike sat on his new balcony, watching the city lights. "Thank you," he said simply. "For all of this?" Sarah shook her head. "You earned this, Mike. All I did was open a door. You walked through it on your own merit." She hesitated, then added, "Though I will admit I'm glad that sandwich led me to find you. Meridian's electric vehicle program would be months behind schedule without your innovations." Mike laughed softly. "That sandwich was meant to be my lunch that day. I had an important meeting too." "You know," Sarah smiled, her expression softening in the dim light. "The universe works in mysterious ways." They fell into a comfortable silence, neither feeling the need to define the connection that had formed between them, colleague, friend, or perhaps something with the potential to become more. There would be time for that, Mike thought. For now, it was enough to sit beside her, feeling for the first time in years that his life was moving forward rather than simply surviving day to day. 1 year later, the Meridian Motors annual gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel. Mike, now the director of electric vehicle engineering, adjusted his tuxedo, purchased, not borrowed this time. As he waited in the lobby, Emma stood beside him in a new dress, her hair carefully styled by Mrs. Garcia. "Do I look okay, Daddy?" she asked, twirling to make the skirt flare. "You look beautiful." "Sunshine," Mike assured her, his throat tight with emotion. Rebecca would have been so proud of their daughter. Now 9, and thriving in her new school where her aptitude for mathematics had caught her teacher's attention. Sarah emerged from the elevator, stunning, in a midnight blue gown, her usual professional demeanor softened by the elegant surroundings. "Well, don't you two clean up nicely?" she said with a smile. Emma ran to hug her, careful not to wrinkle either of their dresses. The gala celebrated Meridian's most successful year to date, with their new electric sedan, featuring Mike's revolutionary battery design, earning industry accolades and record pre-orders. The CEO acknowledged Mike in his speech, calling him the embodiment of Meridian's commitment to recognizing extraordinary talent wherever we find it. At their table, Sarah squeezed Mike's hand under the cloth, her silent pride more meaningful than the public recognition. Later, as Emma charmed the board members with her precocious questions about automotive engineering, Sarah and Mike stepped onto the balcony for a moment of quiet. "Have I told you lately that you're the best hiring decision I ever made?" Sarah asked, her shoulder brushing against his. Mike smiled. "Only about once a week." He turned to face her fully. "But have I told you lately that you're the best thing that ever happened to me and Emma?" Sarah's expression softened. "Mike," he took her hand gently, I'm not good with words like this, but I need you to know that what you did, stopping on the highway that day, bringing me this job, becoming part of our lives, it changed everything. Sarah's eyes glistened in the soft lighting. That goes both ways. You know, before I met you and Emma, my life was all spreadsheets and quarterly reviews. You reminded me why I got into HR in the first place, to help people find where they belong. Mike thought about the small velvet box hidden in his desk drawer at home, waiting for the right moment. Not tonight. Tonight was about celebrating their professional success, but soon, because if the past year had taught him anything, it was that second chances came in unexpected forms, sometimes disguised as broken-down cars and turkey sandwiches. The next morning, Mike and Emma made pancakes in their kitchen, a Saturday tradition they had maintained despite their changed circumstances. Sarah joined them, having stayed in their guest room after the late gala. As they worked together in comfortable domesticity, Mike flipping pancakes, Emma setting the table, Sarah cutting fresh fruit. Mike was struck by how naturally they had become a unit. "We should make sandwiches for lunch," Emma suggested as she carefully poured syrup on her stack. "Since sandwiches are special in our family." Sarah and Mike exchanged smiles over her head. "Sandwiches are an excellent idea," Sarah agreed. "After all, you never know where they might lead." Mike watched them. These two remarkable females who had restored his sense of purpose and possibility. From the darkest period of his life had come an unexpected light. All because of a chance encounter on a highway, and the simple human connection of offering food to a hungry stranger. Sometimes, Mike reflected as he joined his makeshift family at the table, the smallest acts of kindness contain the seeds of the most profound transformations